Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the next presenter will be Dr. Birgit. The culture in Australia and Germany will bring culture into the discussion, outlining the opportunities for SMEs. I wish you
You don't have the microphone, I don't like standing. All right, thank you very much for being here. Who's ever left? Some people have other agendas to attend to, and I'm grateful for you all staying till the end of the day, really. That's the joy of being one of the last speakers. Now, how can I compete with your presentation, James? I mean, you know, that's pretty outstanding. And I was only told about a day or two ago that possibly slides would be welcome. So I sat down yesterday and put something together very quickly as a roadmap, which actually, sorry, I should keep this, thank you very much, to get some ideas. However, again, Jürgen asked me to come from a political or cultural perspective, because that's what my company is called. And I said, well, you know, which angle do I take? My company is called the cultural angle for no reason, right? There's different ways of looking at culture. But I think in our consciousness, and we will see it in a minute, is very much culture and heritage. But I will expand on that one. But before I go into my slides, I'd like to also thank, actually again, Jeffrey Whitman's presentation, and even Jens, you know, the social enterprise aspect in marketing. It really highlights the complexity of tourism and that we need a systems approach to thinking of whatever we do. And I think in our industry, we are just so stuck in linear thinking. And nobody steps out of the box and looks at the complexity and the interconnectedness of all of these agendas that we're talking about. That's why we always say tourism is so complex. Right. I thought I'd quickly, obviously, bring in tourism and culture, and usually that is associated with culture, heritage, and culture tourism, which was again presented just before. And as you can see there, usually that's what it's associated with. We just saw that very distinctly. Okay, we all want to feel and experience something, and thank you for highlighting that in your presentation, Jens, because tourism is an experience economy. It's, you know, used to be called a visitor economy. It's an experience economy. Now, the latest trend and the latest terminology is transformational economy. People want transformation, and that came out of the whole notion of getting engaged in social enterprises, and that's the trend in society. So I will not take much time because I've got so much to think about, but the slides will just give you some ideas. And I'm not here to give answers, but I really want to stimulate questions and different perspectives. So what I looked at is, what is culture? We looked at culture and heritage, but this is a couple of terminologies that came up with, and it comes to mind for most people, the way of life. And that is passed on along with communication. I think it's what we talked about, marketing, big one for communication. How do we communicate our culture? We'll talk about that again in a minute. And it's the imitation of culture. Quite often we imitate something passed down from generation to generation without questioning the culture we grow up with, the value systems, and I expand on that one in a minute. Right? So dress, language, art, rituals, religion, we all know that, and it very much applies to Bali, Indonesia, any kind of destination around the world. Codes of manners of behaviour. Now we talked about that in bad tourist behaviour, they call it, but I would rather call it deviant. Deviant from what we expect other people to do, right? And people don't know, so they are deviant in their behaviour. So we can educate them, hopefully, in some way or another. Norms of behaviour, such as norms and normality, and again, that was very highly addressed here in Bali, and I was part of moderating a webinar recently, and it was Bali, the island of heart, where that was very much a topic, the whole issue of bad tourist behaviour, what to do about it here in Bali, right? So systems of belief, that was alluded to very briefly. What do we believe? How do we believe we should live? What is our existence? What is the essence of our lives? Why are we here? You know, we all grow up in different kind of belief systems, whether you're German, from America, or, you know, growing up here. I worked and lived in Dubai, and I worked at United University purely with Emirati students, purely females, and I learned a lot. We learned a lot from each other, and I'm very grateful for that experience. So belief systems, but they're not necessarily separating us, but actually can bring us together if we see the big picture of it. I'm adopted into one of the families of my students, and I'm sort of an adopted grandmother to one of the children now. Mohammed is aged 8 years old and Mahara is 2.5. And Mohammed calls me Bibi with blue eyes. So, so the culture, they're Muslims, not Christian, and not. So we travel to Indonesia, just like a family. So religion, at least as such, are not the separating issues. Manifestation of culture. I brought this up because, again, I think Ken's presentation highlighted the whole notion of marketing and what tourism is all about. Now we see at the outside the symbols when we walk around Indonesia and Bali, for instance. We see all the symbols, beautiful buildings and the heritage buildings, and also something that people do not think about is heroes. Who have we got as heroes in our society? Who are the heroes here in Indonesia and Bali? Who do you value? Who do you look up to? Who are your role models? We grow up with role models as children, quite often our parents, or the uncles, or whatever we grow up with. Heroes are very important. Rituals again. Now these three layers, the symbols are the most obvious ones, then heroes and rituals, we see them, and they are the ones that are being marketed in travel and tourism, because they're tangible. But the real true culture is found in the values. They're the intangibles. What are the belief systems? Right? If we bear that in mind, because I think we're sort of missing the boat, that we're too superficial, and consumers and the travellers are also travelling on the same notion, because that's how we market things. That's what they buy, the images of what they can see, touch, hear, and feel, and taste the food. One point that came to mind as well with that whole notion of tourism, do we have just cultural tourism? Social tourism, adventure tourism, food tourism, wine tourism, mountain tourism, all sorts of kinds of tourism. And WTN is about niche tourism. Right? Now, my background, apart from doing what I'm doing today, I'm with different hats. I love doing different things at different times. My PhD was actually conceptualizing special interest tourism, which is actually the other side of the coin of niche tourism. But it comes very much from a consumer perspective. From what do they want? What are they wanted to do? And it's mushroomed. Everybody calls their kind of niche something different to differentiate themselves. Right? Fascinating. I find that really might be a semantic issue, but no, it's a basic conceptual issue. So niche tourism, special interest tourism, very much in mind. You can find me, I publish it in encyclopedia and so forth. You can access those papers. Culture and opportunities for SMEs. That was the other key points you gave me, Jürgen. And I thought, oh, then it gives me that. What shall I do with that? All right, so I put this together. And why I'm using this, it actually comes out of the book that I published in 2020. It's a cycle of travel experiences. We're talking about travel experiences per se, travel experience economy. It starts at home, in our dreams, in our aspirations, through storytelling, through reading something. The way we grow up, we have had fantasies as children going somewhere. Little stories as children that we get exposed to. Put things into our minds as we grow up. We want to do that, we want to go there. I always wanted to come to Bali when I was still living in Germany a long time ago. And here I am. So it starts from home, from dreaming. Then we start planning, that's the actual side. So when we look at SMEs, they can all be involved in that. And people also alluded to that one. So marketing, the planning stages, communicating with people even before they get to the destination. Because that's where we start to set the scene for the experiences, for the people to get engaged. So that in transit, we talked about taxis and safety and security, all of that comes into that. Who are the SMEs involved in that? In transit, on the way, who is looking after them? Of course, everybody focuses on destinations. The view from above, I call it, just before you land with the aircraft, you're getting all excited. And you sort of want to see the real thing. But then you get out onto the ground and then you get the experience immersion, and that was beautifully presented just there by the ends. And that's possibly what a destination quite often look at, destination marketing. Focus is always on the destination per se, what have they got to offer, without realizing who are the tourists, what motivates them. On the way home in transit, concluding that cycle, is in transit again. Who are the SMEs involved in that? Let's have a look at that. Let's think about that. Lots of them can be engaged in that, in after the actual on-site experiences. It's a pre, during, and after. We should not forget that. SMEs can be all involved in that. And again, coming home, reflection. That's something forgotten in most people's minds, because people travel and they have wonderful experiences, and a lot of them get they go into a reverse culture shock. They come back home, they get depressed because they come back to the reality of the daily life. Because that's why they are traveling, to be exposed to new experiences, to be someone else, to create another identity that they cannot be and live at home. They come home and all of a sudden reality hits them again. What do they want to do? They don't even think about their last experiences. They book the next flight to somewhere else. All right? So they become addicted to travel. And that is a trend in society, and we shouldn't forget that, particularly after COVID. Lack of connection, everybody wants to be connected. Human connection is hugely important, and we can't have that through Zoom. We have an energy. And that's what we feel when we are on site somewhere. And that's the joy of travel, really, that energy, that human energy. Okay. So, I've decided, apart from that, because everybody's spoken about that, marketing that, but we should look at culture from a different angle. Hence, my company is called a cultural angle. And you brought up national culture. People think of national culture, Indonesia. Indonesia is a big country. How diverse is it within that country? Bali is an example compared to the rest of it. Right? So people don't realise that the majority of differences in culture is actually not between countries, it's within countries. A lot of research has that you really stated and supported that globally, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in any kind of country. The diversity is within countries, and that's quite often where the problems are if we are looking at differences, but also similarities that we can actually look into. I come from Germany, go to Dubai, I'm traveling to Indonesia with my Emirati friends, completely different cultures, but their core value systems are the same. And there was a bit of song about earlier, it's all about love, it's all about love. We love each other as a family, and that's the core value, right? We shouldn't forget that. So we can look at education culture. People talked about that too. Very important, education culture. What culture have we got? Is it still the same that it was 20, 30 years ago when we entered academia? We did a PhD? Is it the same now compared to even 10 years ago? Who is part of education? What kind of organisations are in education? Who's doing what education? In what country are we getting educated? People asked me when I was teaching in Germany, and I had done my PhD in Australia at the University of Queensland. The students asked me, where did you get educated? They said, well, have a guess. I got educated as a child, a youngster in Germany. So I got all the value systems from Germany. I wasn't educated in Australia. That was the mature age student, right? Quite different. Family culture. Now that is a big one that I'm really interested in, because it can sort of be forgotten. But Peter, where is he? He alluded to that. Hi, Peter. He talked about relationships, and I'll go into that a little bit. Family culture. That is what we get as children, no matter what. And we have our value system, what we believe, our fears, our kinds of attachments, what we're looking for in relationships comes from families. And that's the big one we have to look at. That's where the difference is within countries too, depending on what kind of family culture you had. Even within Bali, if your family culture was different and your parents had a different kind of interaction, they believed in different things, they come from a different religion, the parents interacted differently, father and mother, that imprints us as children, and we actually develop our value systems and our identities within ourselves, who we are, what we aspire to be. So family culture, please do not forget it. I'm a social psychologist, obviously stands out, behavioural scientist. Sports culture. Who doesn't know about sports culture? Australia is known for sports, very driven by that. Sport has become one of the biggest events globally as an industry, and very highly invested in, because people identify with sport because it gives them something to believe in. Corporate culture. Now, and I'm starting to come to the nitty-gritty here as far as business is concerned, as it is. It's corporate culture. When we are looking at SMEs, we have to look at the big picture of corporations. And corporations' organisation culture. What kind of value system? Who are the leaders? What kind of leadership culture do we have? Are they really concerned about the employees? Are they involved in really benefiting whoever is engaged or is to be looked after as far as the organisation is concerned, and that relates to also whether it's in tourism or education. You know, we should ask ourselves, what is the corporate culture here? Are we benefiting, and who's benefiting? Economic benefits, let's look at that. Who's benefiting in tourism? And I have this thing with about cruise ships and so forth, and we have a brief discussion about that. You know, when we look at that, it's a very clear example of the benefits. Are there lots of people really benefiting at destinations from cruise ship tourism? We all possibly converted here, we all know they don't really. The majority of the funds and so forth benefits goes out to the cruise ship company somewhere in Bahamas or somewhere, right? So it doesn't stay with the local ones. Look at that. Organisation culture goes along with corporate culture. Now these are ones that I quickly want to highlight. Culture of consumerism. Isn't that how we're living in today's society? Are we consuming constantly? Are we motivated by all the advertising to consume more? And that includes travel. You know, how many ads do you see in the local papers? You're bombarded online when you switch your computer on with marketing for travel. We're consuming travel, we're consuming destinations. We're part and parcel of tourism for consumer culture. Sorry to say that, but I'm very critical of that in a way. So we should also consider that. The culture of tourism, that is something again that people don't really realise. What kind of tourism culture do we have within each culture and country? It is contextual. You know, the tourism culture here might be quite different to the tourism culture in, say, where Jens worked before in Bahamas, or in Australia, or I'm just trying to pick someone else, USA, or someone like that. Put your hands on Britain, you know, different ones. So we have to look at culture again, it's more than that. Culture of tourists was also highlighted. What kind of culture do they bring to the destination? What kind of value systems? What kind of behaviour? Now, unfortunately, we live in an entitled culture, a culture of entitlement, and I call it culture of individualism. And also, unfortunately, I would have to highlight that, and perhaps that comes out of possibly Peter's presentation, we are still suffering from a culture called patriarchy. Bingo, that's a naughty word that a lot of people don't like to hear. But when we start looking at culture, we're looking at the value system, how we interact, how we communicate, what have we learned. The one that obviously I had raised earlier, I'm really interested in the culture of peace. But we cannot look at the culture of peace without looking at the other cultures. Right? And again, was alluded to, is the past, the present, and the future. How did we live peace in the culture before, in the past? What happened before tourism arrived? Was it a peaceful country, Bali? No conflict with tourists? No different classes of value systems? That's the past. What's the present like? And I've really highlighted culture and heritage is so much sold. But what about the living culture? Today, how are people living? Do we really go out and have a look outside the pretty kind of settings that are being advertised in marketing material? Do we go and have a look at how the real people live? I can just only say, I'm not staying here today. I'm staying in a very Balinese little hotel in a little village very far away, surrounded by Balinese, because I wanted to feel the culture. I wanted to be immersed in the culture. Only that way can I get the reality of it. I don't want the glossy stuff. And that's of course what a lot of people want these days, and that's the social kind of enterprise that Jens highlighted. Now, culture of peace. And you know, Gail will be talking about that very shortly. There's always two sides to the coin, isn't it? But I'll start with this pleasant side, which is peace domains. And when we think of peace, what do you think of when I say culture of peace? What comes to mind? Anybody? Anybody want to share their thoughts? Peace? What's peace to you? You know, it's an easy question. Reflect on that. I always make the point that there's a question of inner peace and outer peace. Because peace is about relationships. Relationships with ourselves, with others, as people, and the environment. We come back to and see Birgit Trauer, the lines with that again, right? So you cannot forget that. When we come from the micro to the macro, you can see right goes to national culture within nations, and then international ones. And that's what most people actually think about, isn't it, when we talk about peace? And then the ecological one, again, Jeffrey highlighted that, and the existential, which is a relationship with God, or should we say now with climate change and the universe beyond where we are here on Earth. Conflict is the other side of the coin. And that is where I like to go a little bit, because here we're talking about corporate culture and also strategic management. We're looking at the notion of systems approach and things like that, rather than linear thinking. So we have to look at conflict on the other side of the coin. And where does conflict arise? There are three main core areas of conflict. Now, you can apply that from micro to macro. Economic and access to resources. We'll be talking about SMEs. What kind of access to resources have they got? What support mechanism have they got within the corporate culture, within the tourism culture, as they exist here in Indonesia or whatever it may be? Right? So access to resources is huge, particularly when we consider the high percentage is actually females within that. 50%, I think, was Alexander was pointing that out. And I think that's a global kind of trend. The females within travel tourism being at the lower end of the employment category. But they're the ones that we're talking about. We're talking poverty alleviation, isn't it? So the different worldviews and values, yes, very much so. If it comes back to what's right and wrong. If I believe, having someone, say someone in the northern part of Europe or some part, he has a completely different worldview the way he goes about, entering other people's homes, which is country. And I don't want to say, well, we're talking about Russia and Ukraine. We're talking about peace at a global level. Right? It's a worldview, it's a value system, and he drives it from a completely different one. He's not peace-oriented or peace-sensitive, he has a different agenda. Power and control comes into it, as well for SMEs. Power, do they have power? Do they have control, SMEs? Do they have that because they have resources? When they're living in a culture that is actually driven by partnering and those male and female kind of generalized, I can expand on that a little bit more, premises, we have to look at that. When females come into the business, SMEs, a lot of them also are mothers, wives, running households. They have other important roles to fulfill. And the society within which they live, particularly if you're looking at the ones in little villages and so forth, come from those traditional value systems and role expectations. So for them, the barriers are much bigger than the ones that possibly live in cities and are highly educated. Right? So they're the ones we have to really worry about. So micro and macro, again, all the time looking at what is peace, at what level. Where have you, for instance, experienced conflict recently? At a private level at home? I think Peter was alluding to that. When a couple goes on holidays, it's proven through research. The longer you go away as a couple, and you're trying to fix your marriage, and you're hanging out together all the time, they come back quite often get a divorce, so please go to a counselor to try and get some assistance. And I actually, it's funny to bring that up and bring something to mind. In 2003, I had the joy of presenting a paper, seeing that you're laughing. It was called Intimacy Theory in Tourism. Yes, there you go. No, you can find it on Research Again. It's published, highly cited actually, together with another Chris Ryan actually. And anyway, when I presented that paper in Brisbane, and I thought I was a newbie on the block 20 years ago, there was nobody there. They all walked out. And then they were just coming in. We had to bring more chairs and they locked the door. I looked around and asked, wonder why you're here? 80% men. And I said, it was the word intimacy. And yeah, I laughed. And I said, let me enlighten you. There's more to intimacy than what you think. And it is. Oh, is there really? Well, come to one of my workshops. I'm going to run retreats here in Bali, hopefully soon on that one. Okay, you want to learn something? But that's what tourism is all about. And I think Peter alluded to that. Why do people travel quite often, particularly as individuals or as couples? They want to have an experience. They want to see the other identity that they've lost, particularly when they're in relationships. Huge one. There's breakdowns of relationships, of disconnect, of loneliness. Huge issue. And that's why we're having a trend in wellness tourism. Do this like that, because it's not about going to spas. Wellness is psychological wellness. That's what we need. That's what health tourism is. That's another agenda we need to look at. Societal breakdown. Okay, so that's another passion of mine, as you can see. All right. I have got some more slides. Yes, this one here is all set up again, almost finished. When we look at SMEs, and what I've alluded to, as you can see, is a more picture and a systems approach, we really benefit from doing SWOT analysis. What strengths or weaknesses have the individual enterprises, and what opportunities and threats have they got? Can't be unrealistic and just go, oh, you know, we can do this and they can do this. Have we asked them? Big question. Someone said too, we always have to ask questions, don't we? Socrates said, all I know is that I know nothing. And I live by that. I always ask questions. So, that's what that one. And I'll leave you all just very briefly with this quote. And actually that's the title of the book that I published at the end of 2020. It's called The Way of the Peaceful Traveller. Dare to Care and Connect. That's what travel and tourism is all about, connection. Intimate connections, emotional connections, all about emotions. However, I might just add that particular book, I've written it not just with tourism in mind, because my philosophy on that is, and that aligns with also with Jeffrey's, we are all travellers, no matter what role we play in society. Whether we work in industry, and particular industry, they travel a lot. But we also are travellers at home. We are travellers here on Mother Earth, not just when we're on holidays. And during all the travels do we have responsibilities. Now when I wrote this book, is with that particular quote in mind, we must be aware of the real problems in the world. Then with mindfulness, this is another interesting topic, we will know what to do and what not to do to help. Right? SWOT analysis comes to mind again. Unless we look at that, we do not know what we really need to address. Okay, if we only look at the good side of the coin, we don't know really what we want to try and avoid doing. So again, it's just going back to the book. Unfortunately, I didn't bring a copy. I should have done that too. Could have handed out some copies of that, but you can get it on Amazon and Kindle format too. How I approach that book is actually a self-learning kind of approach, where it's an interactive one, where I take people on different steps along the journey, I call it. And firstly, I'll let you know, I talk about what's travel, what is peace, what is mindfulness. Mindfulness is a new trendy word and a new kind of niche market. We call it niche tourism. What's mindfulness? They're also, sorry to make this funny joke, sit on the cushion and do meditate to become mindful of themselves. But I call, what are we mindful of? What should we be mindful of rather than just ourselves? But the trend, the commercialization of mindfulness away from the Buddhist concept is egocentric, focusing on me, on wellness, because we're all so stressed. So we all do yoga, we do get nice spas, and all of that. We forget about actually linking with the other people. Are we not? When I grew up, I wasn't taught about how well I'm doing. Mind your manners, make sure you don't do the wrong thing by other people. It's a value system. Do you treasure, do you care about other people? The manner of care, that's what we're missing as a society. And that was what motivated me to write that particular book. So I basically do a journey through emotional intelligence training, value system training, where people can explore their values, their needs, what are needs and values. Values are driven by our needs. If they are not met, we get very angry, we get upset, we get hurt, we're fearful of losing something that's really important to us. So the needs, we need to ask someone, how do you feel? Why do you feel like that? What needs haven't been met in order to help? Do you want me to help? What can I do for you? And that's called nonviolent communication, which I also teach part of it. So we need to communicate. And communication, before I'll leave you to this one. Communication is an interesting one because culture, I always say, is about communication. And communication is culture. The way we communicate, whether it's through symbols, through language, through just being around each other, that's communication. Everybody thinks about communication is just marketing something or writing a letter. Actually, written communication is only 10% of the pinnacle of communication. The majority of communication is what we don't see, what we can only feel in the body language, the energy that comes across. That's the joy of travel. Yes, and I'll leave you with this quote because I've used it a lot now, and actually this is a reminder that I use. Even my other courses that I do for relationship counselling, I do. Because to me, I think Peter said, tourism is all about business. Can I expand on that one? Actually, I would say tourism is all about relationships. I call it actually a relationship economy. And I believe that travel and tourism, or tourism in particular, is the biggest psychological couch of our era. That's what it does.
But tourism is relationships.
Yes, well that's right, it is. And then out of it. But without good relationships, we win.
Tourism is all about business, and business is relationships.
Thank you very much for that expansion. Good, I like that. Teamwork. So yes, I put this together as a reminder. And I think the problem we have in our society, that even business, whether it's corporate culture, is we ask with assumptions, but we have to ask a question without assumptions, you know, to appreciate others' perspectives. How do they feel about it? And listen with love. The beautiful song that we had from Aston earlier, all about love, and you know, I can relate to that song very much on the anthem. It's all about love. And I actually did a webinar recently, again, a tourism webinar, on mental health in tourism. A big one, and I think there's a big presentation tomorrow. Mental health is part of health tourism. And I look at it because of special interest, we're having a look at spectrum. We look at medical versus wellness. There's a difference along the spectrum. But love is actually proven through all the medical and mental health research, all the frameworks. It's one of the first topics that comes up in all the listings, whether positive psychology or mental health and so forth, different frameworks. They all have love up there at the top, side of it. So it's love connection that we need. You know, it's all about love. That song said that. Observe open-mindedly, I think we realise that. To see things from different perspectives. So much we come in and come from our own cultural perspective, and we don't stop. Take a deep breath, just listen to the other person. Now, honour with humility, and that's a biggie. The feelings and the needs of others. We're so often driven by our own fears, by our own emotions, by our own needs, and all we can think of is jump in when someone says something and say what we want, what we need, instead of listening to the other person. Yeah? We have to really pay attention. And ask again to act, and that is the last one, to contribute to healthy relationships and, of course, peaceful coexistence. And that's really what tourism and travel are all about. And anyway, that's really what you're all about. And I know how exactly may I say, coincident that I've had that phrase a long time now, and of course fits really nicely with you because you live in Hawaii. Okay, so that's my presentation for tonight, and thank you very much for being here. Any questions, please ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Birgit. The work is really